Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to have you here today because we're looking at a historical figure whose life is unexpectedly dynamic. You know, we often think of 16th century monks as quiet figures just hidden away in cloisters, right? Well, scratch that stereotype. Today's subject lived a life that reads literally like an adventure novel, full of high-stakes diplomacy, military conflicts, and towering intellectual achievements.
Okay, let's dive right into this. What connects a polyglot, a diplomat, and a military chaplain? How could these seemingly completely different, high-stakes roles all be embodied by a single 16th century monk? I mean, it sounds almost impossible for one person to wear all those hats, especially in an era when travel and communication were, frankly, incredibly difficult. But this is exactly what makes our subject so utterly fascinating.
To start, we kind of have to look at where he began. And honestly, even his birth name is fascinating. Before he was a saint, he was actually born with the name Julius Caesar. No way, right? Born in 1559 in Brindisi, which was a town located on the Adriatic coast down in the heel of Italy. At the time, that was part of the kingdom of Naples. Imagine carrying the name of one of history's greatest conquerors. It almost foreshadows the massive impact he was going to have on the entire European continent.
Section 1. The friar named Julius Caesar.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is we traditionally see St. Lawrence depicted in the classic habit of a Capuchin Franciscan friar, holding a skull. That's a common symbol of mortality and spiritual reflection. As a youth, he was educated by conventual Franciscan friars. Later on, he went to Venice to study at the College of St. Mark, and it was there that he entered the Capuchins and officially took the name Lawrence. From Venice, he moved on to finish his studies at the University of Padua, which was absolutely one of the most prestigious intellectual hubs of the entire era.
Section 2. Master of Many Tongues.
So it was at the University of Padua where his unique academic skill set really started to shine. He showed an absolute flair for languages, mastering Hebrew, Greek, German, Bohemian, Spanish, and French. Because of this incredible facility with languages, coupled with just an extraordinary knowledge of the text of the Bible, he's actually considered the greatest linguist among all the doctors of the church. He wasn't just casually studying these languages, he was mastering them to understand the scriptures deeply and to actually communicate with people all across Europe in their native tongues.
And he definitely didn't keep this knowledge locked up in some dusty library. He weaponized this intellect early on. While he was still only a deacon, St. Lawrence became known as a truly excellent preacher. Once he was ordained, he took those skills and absolutely startled the whole of northern Italy with his amazing sermons. He was a teacher of sacred scripture, an exegete, and a Mariologist, using his profound learning to totally captivate audiences and bring those ancient texts to life.
Section 3. Chaplain and Master Diplomat. Let's move to the timeline and see how this all builds. We'll map out his rapid rise and key historical interventions around the turn of the 17th century. We're going to see him jumping from military conflicts to global administrative leadership, and finally to high-stakes political advocacy.
Let's start with 1601. He was sent into Germany by the Pope to establish Capuchin houses, but his role expanded really quickly. He became the chaplain to Emperor Rudolf II. Now in 1601, Muslim forces were actively threatening Hungary, and Lawrence was right there on the front lines. He had a remarkable influence on the Christian soldiers facing this severe threat. In fact, his impact was so profound that in traditional symbols and art, he's often represented literally leading the Christian army against the Turks. He wasn't a soldier with a sword, but a spiritual leader providing absolutely critical morale and courage in the face of brutal warfare.
Following his time on the battlefield, he stepped right into the world of international diplomacy, racking up some incredible achievements. Through his direct efforts, the Catholic League was formed to give solidarity to the Catholic cause in Europe. The emperor trusted him so much that he was sent to persuade King Philip III of Spain to join this league, and while he was there, he established a Capuchin friary in Madrid. As if that wasn't enough, he also brokered peace between Spain and the Kingdom of Savoy. He was a trusted peacemaker, just navigating the most powerful royal courts of Europe like it was nothing.
Section 4. Leading the Catholic Restoration.
9,000. I want you to let that staggering number sink in for a second. In 1602, he was elected Minister General of his order, and in this role, he was directing the work of 9,000 friars. He made the Capuchins a major force in the Catholic Restoration. And he didn't do this from some comfortable corner office. He personally visited every single friary across the 34 provinces of the order. The logistical scope of this leadership, relying solely on 17th century travel, is simply mind-blowing.
And what's truly beautiful here is the duality of his character. On one hand, he was this dominant, powerful figure, carrying out the major theological work of the Council of Trent and leading the Counter-Reformation in Austria and Bohemia. On the other hand, his boots-on-the-ground compassion for the poor, the needy, and the sick remained completely legendary. He never let his high office or his towering intellect distance him from the vulnerable people who needed him the absolute most.
The historical weight of his actions is just undeniable. Later on, Pope Benedict XV offered a glowing endorsement, stating that Lawrence had earned, and I quote, a truly distinguished place among the most outstanding men ever raised up by divine providence to assist the Church in time of distress. He was exactly the right person with exactly the right skills at exactly the right time.
Section 5. A final mission for justice.
So the crucial point is that his final journey wasn't about securing more power or personal glory. In 1619, Lawrence undertook a really arduous journey all the way to Lisbon to see King Philip III of Spain again. But this time, he was going on behalf of the oppressed people of Naples, his own birthplace. They were being ruled by a tyrannical governor, and Lawrence, using all of his diplomatic capital and influence, went to fiercely advocate for their freedom and justice.
Tragically, this final mission for justice cost him his life. Lawrence reached Lisbon where the king was residing, but it was there that a severe illness overtook him. He died in Lisbon, making the ultimate sacrifice while trying to protect the vulnerable. After his passing, his body was carried back to Spain and buried in the Church of the Poor Clares at Villafranca del Bierzo.
Section 6. Legacy of a Doctor.
His remarkable contributions definitely did not go unnoticed. He was canonized as a saint in 1881 by Pope Leo XIII. But perhaps even more impressively, in 1959, Pope John XXIII declared him a doctor of the Church. What makes this so special is that St. Lawrence became the very first Capuchin Franciscan to ever be honored with that prestigious title, forever cementing his status as a brilliant teacher and a model for studies and preaching.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core takeaway from his life. Lawrence of Brindisi was a man who weaponized his vast intellect, his language skills, and his diplomatic leverage not for himself, but for compassion and servant leadership. He advocated for the sick, the poor, and the politically oppressed. So I want to leave you with this question. Looking at his example, how will you use your own unique talents, whatever they may be, to advocate for the vulnerable today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.